welcome to our event. Bear with me. I'm going to read you a smidge of a list. They make cheese, soap, pretzels. They cut grass. They cut hair. They run restaurants, tech companies. They're artists and black belts, doctors and influencers. They're entrepreneurs, and they're among the dozens of founders we've featured on thefounderbeat.com since launching it less than 9 months ago. Welcome to the FounderBeat's first event. I'm Rebecca Hanlon. I am the president of Our York Media and the co-founder of thefounderbeat.com. And for the past several months, we have been showcasing local entrepreneurs and all that they contribute to our community. Over the past 6 years, my husband Will and I have run Our York Media. And like many businesses, we have experienced the highs and lows. We have cried tears of joy and tears of frustration. At the start of COVID, we thought we might lose everything. From having to lay off employees to Will being on the phone with FedEx, trying to figure out if he needed to pick up extra hours so we could pay the mortgage. With a little bit of luck and a lot of hard work, we never had to do that, and we survived. And when we came out of COVID lockdown and we looked around, we realized that there were many others who had also survived. And even more so, those who had the guts to start something in the middle of a pandemic. Chasing the dream, risk be damned. So the idea for the Founder Beat was that it was a place that we would share stories of local entrepreneurs, nonprofit founders, local business leaders who think innovatively and who contribute really great things to our community. And thus was born the Founder Beat. And several of you tonight have actually been featured on the website, and I'm so excited that you decided to join us. Actually, the food from this evening is provided by Skillet to Plate, one of the many entrepreneurs that we've also featured on the Founder Beat. So far, we have featured over 30 founders of York County businesses and organizations. About half of our profiles feature a person of color. Half have been women-owned or co-owned businesses. 2 have been middle-aged, bald white men. They're doing a great job. We featured familiar faces and others you might not know as well yet. And our founders come from as close as York City and Dover to as far away as Peru, South America, and Cameroon, Africa. About the only common thread of each individual's hero journey is that they all ran through York. And our speaker tonight, one of the most successful business leaders who has touched York County, will share their story in a moment. Before we get to his story, I'd like to introduce our event sponsor, which helped make tonight possible and free. So please welcome Melissa from Business Information Group. Yes, you may use that. You're doing a great job. So, Melissa, tell us a little bit about BIG.
So BIG is a local IT firm, and when I say local, I mean we're right up the street on George Street. We were founded by 2 brothers, Scott and John, and we're celebrating our 30th year in business. That was a good time to get a phone call. We're celebrating our 30th year in business. So when you say IT, I feel that eyes start to glaze over, but something that I really love about BIG is that we aim to make IT a digestible and understandable concept for our clients and not just a necessary evil. We do everything from networking and security to we have a professional services group that works mainly in the construction space, and they do design, customization, and implementation of ERP systems. And then our wireless branch has a little bit more of a national reach. So we do indoor and outdoor Wi-Fi installations, large and small. Right now, we're working on a pretty cool project with York City where we've done the design and engineering for citywide Wi-Fi in York.
So how did you come to York and land your role?
So I'm actually a transplant, but don't hold that against me. I'm originally from Chicago, but...
Tonight is about transplants.
It's about transplants, yeah. So I'm from Chicago. That was a harrowing situation. I moved here looking for work. I had a 2-month-old baby, and I had some family connections in the area. And then I enrolled in York College as a non-traditional student. And it took me 7 long years to complete my degree because I was a mom and I was working full time. And then about a year after I graduated college, Big reached out to me on LinkedIn, but I was like, this is spam, and I just deleted that message. And then thankfully our recruiter, Gabby, reached out to me again and started telling me about the company and about their values. And one of the questions that I asked them in my interview was, how do you guys give back to the community? You know, what kind of community service things do you do? And they started explaining to me a lot of their partnerships with local nonprofits in New York. And so I just really felt that our values were aligned. And then all of those decisions have led me to public speaking tonight. So now we're here.
Why would you say you care about local business in York?
Because it's personal to us. We're a York business. And if we don't have a successful, thriving community, it not only impacts our ability to attract and retain new clients, but it impacts our ability to attract and retain top talent. Big is really big on, no pun intended, Big is really big on providing education. So for example, we're having a no-cost cybersecurity event at York College in June. So that's just one of the ways that we focus on providing education about IT and just making it more understandable.
Yeah, awesome. What is something you might want people to take away from tonight?
That is a great question, and I am not at all stalling for a great answer. Just that I think that Big is a local community partner, that we are homegrown, and that our owners have taken a measured and steady approach to business. To be an IT company and to be celebrating your 30th year in business, that is no small feat. IT companies come and go. But I think that we've taken an approach that we don't want to be just another vendor for our clients, that we want to be an extension of their business to help them achieve their goals.
Awesome. Melissa, thank you for supporting our event tonight. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. I'm so excited.
Let's hear it for Big. All right. So a little behind the scenes, when Will and I were planning this event, we had an intense moment of fellowship when it came to the title. That is a term for fights that our marriage counselor used when we were in premarital counseling. So we had an intense moment of fellowship about the title of this event, Table 19. Nobody will know what it means, he said. It will take too long to explain, he said. Well, you know what? We were worried about having enough seats for tonight's event. So you know who lost that argument? We're here at Table 19 tonight. So Mr. Bob Pullo is actually the inspiration for the title of the event. If you have ever had the opportunity to run into Bob Pullo in any sort of public setting, and you were brave enough to say, Mr. Pullo, I would love some more time with you, he would graciously invite you to breakfast at Table 19 at Round the Clock Diner in East York. And you would get all gussied up for your breakfast, and you would go in to the hostess, and she would say, how many for breakfast? And you would say, oh, I'm going to Table 19. And they would know you were having breakfast with Mr. Bob Pullo. It's a thing, and it's a very cool feeling to experience it. Now, we might not have the poached eggs and the English muffin today, but we are bringing Table 19 to the grotto, where there's a little more room for everyone else to sit and learn from a wonderful friend and mentor of mine who I think has some great knowledge to share for those who are rolling up their sleeves and doing their own thing in York. So without further ado, Mr. Bob Pullo.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
This is not our first conversation. So Bob actually did a podcast interview with us. It might have been 4 years ago. Well, how many years has Give Local gone on?
5 years ago.
5 years. So it was right after Give Local York started. We sat down and we did a podcast interview. And it was largely about your philanthropic endeavors and passion and what led you to that scope. But you have, while people might know you more recently for Give Local York and those philanthropic efforts, you really have this vast business experience of building something in a community that was not your hometown, but you very much made it so. Would you give everyone just kind of a brief synopsis of start of your career? It started pretty early for you.
My early career in Boston?
Yeah.
Oh my, I thought you were going to do
Just
that.
a snippet. You tell it better than I do.
I thought you was going to ask me to talk to you about since I came here to York. So just a couple of things. I came here as an unknown to York. I had lost my job in Boston for good reasons and so forth. But I learned one of the greatest lessons of my life. For instance, my bank was purchased, which it had been purchased 3 times before that. And I was the facilitator of the transaction each time because I was the treasurer of the bank. And so every time that happened, I got a new board of directors or a new principal that owned the bank, and I would do all the work for them. They'd say, Bob, I'll be the good guy, you'll be the bad guy, and we'll get along just great. And I was a great support for them, I'm sure. The third time that happened, I was called into the office of the buyer, which is a wonderful fellow, Alan Levy. Jews didn't get banking opportunities or bank ownership opportunities in Boston. In fact, maybe Italians didn't either because they told me they don't promote Italians when I first got a job in Boston. So I had to suck that up and work to do everything I could to come back someday and may stick my tongue out at them, you know, that I did all right. So anyway, the bank, the situation gave me, it was a recession. The situation gave me a wonderful insight to life. To Mr. Levy, I said, I know you're a great banker, I'll enjoy working with you. He said, oh, Bob, he said, that's what I'm here to tell you. He said, I gave you a job, and I promised him that if I succeeded in buying the bank, that he would be my treasurer. And I said, well, I sort of knew that might happen. That's okay. And he was very gracious and generous with me. And then he said to me, I said to him, well, how long do you want me to work for with him until I leave? And he said, not at all. And I was shocked. You know, I felt I was at least the archive champion of the bank. I knew where everything was, and I knew what was in the process, and I knew all the people, blah, 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 all of that. And so that lesson learned there, of course, is that you are not indispensable. No matter how good you are, how dedicated you are, you could be gone tomorrow. So you should be prepared for a tomorrow that could come, whether you want it or not. It's a longer story, but that's about enough of that.
Hold the mic up just a little higher.
Okay. I might explain also I am deaf. So, number one, if I say anything stupid, there's a 50% chance I'm not. But I have cochlear implants, so I have computerized hearing, which is an absolute miraculous thing. So most of my career, I did not have that much of a challenge, but I had a hearing challenge. And irrespective of that, I thought I became successful, and ultimately I was able to get cochlear implants, because if you miss a word, you miss the point, you know, and then you don't feel part of what's going on, and you make a fool of yourself. You waste everybody's time. You're talking about one thing, they're talking about another, and say, what's with that Pullo guy? So, what more did you want me to say about that?
What was the opportunity that was presented in York that brought you here?
Say that again.
What was the opportunity that was in York that brought you here?
Thank you. Get me back on track. There was an ad in the paper for an executive vice president to become president of the York Federal Savings and Loan. It was the only job I applied for outside New England, and I had lots of job offers, but they weren't the same as what I had or would experience or would like. So, you know, we dealt with that. And when I made an application to this Wall Street Journal ad, I turned out to be their selection, but not their first choice. I was second. And the first guy apparently didn't take the job because he came from Florida in a luxurious area of business, and he didn't like the idea that he had to give up his electric drapes in the office. And I didn't even have an office, and I didn't care. So he turned it down, and I got the job. And it was really nice. You know, when I lost the job in Boston, when I did go home, when he told me I didn't need to work there anymore, I said, Donna, I have to get another phone. And in those days, you had to, you know, if you didn't have a phone, you had a two-party line. I don't know if you all know what that is. But anyway, so I said, Donna, we have to get another phone because, my God, they're going to be calling me all the time, what I know and what they're in for and where things are and what's in the mill here, work being done, work that has to be done. And so we got another phone. It never rang. Second lesson of my life, they didn't need me. So when I got here then, all of this, I came in and I interviewed all day long, and all of this at night was closed. It was dark, you know, there was nothing going on. And that was in the 70s, the early 70s, and well, I figured it was kind of normal. Everybody goes home at 5 o'clock. Had I known that it was like that all day long, every day, the businesses were shut down. There really was a poor, active participation by businesses in the city, and the windows were boarded up, not boarded up, but they were shuttered. And I'd like to say I wouldn't have taken the job if I saw that, but not true. I loved York when I saw it, and I did take that job. And when I got here, my predecessor was a piece of work, and it was very hard to manage following him around or being engaged with him in anything because he drank too much and couldn't come back to work and stuff like that. It was a shame because he was a really good guy that alcohol did him in. So I got become president a lot faster than we had wanted it to occur.
What were some of those challenges that you faced early on getting into that role?
You know, there's so many things. If you all think back and take the time to assess what's happened to you or to your community, to your loved ones, to your friends, you kind of remember things like TMI, what devastation there was around here, and fear. And I don't know if you ever saw the movie, I think it was Carpetbagger, where Kirk Douglas or Michael Douglas, I don't know which generation did that, but he jumped up on top of a car and was talking to the people, don't take your money out of the bank, it's safe, you know, leave it here, it's safer here than what you're gonna do. And so those were the kind of people that were coming in the bank when the 3 Mile Island threat came in. And so my success there was to engage with the employees who were crying on the teller line because everybody was leaving town afraid we're going to die, and they're having a conversation about dying while this poor person's working and has to work till the doors close. And and then I would talk to the clients, and I'd walk down the line and talk to them and say, look, when you get to the window, please don't argue with the teller. They can only give you $500. It's not their fault, but we're going to run out of cash, and we'll give you a check for anything you want. But don't make tellers break down crying on the line. And so that helped a little bit. And from that experience, which was really almost immediately after I came here, to be doing business but not doing business and trying to advise people, you don't want to drive out of town with a Pennsylvania plate and they know you got all your life's belongings in the car with you, in the trunk or something like that, or at least your most valuables. You know, you're going to be a victim. So anyway, we went through that and got through that. That was one big one. But in these periods, there were 3 recessions, and they were deep. And that's sort of why I couldn't get a job right away up in the Boston area. It was a deep recession then. I found when I looked at all the history, it's an interesting fact that most of the recessions that we've had of recent vintage since, let's say, the 50s have been in years that included the last number 8. 2008, 1988, 1978. Watch out for the 8s. 8's supposed to be a lucky number. It's not.
Not in your experience.
No.
It's interesting that the 3 Mile Island story that you bring up. My mother tells a story. So for those of you who aren't aware of what was a potential meltdown of 3 Mile Island, nuclear meltdown, and people left town afraid for what might happen. My mother's parents owned an ice cream store. And my mom tells a story of watching traffic outside the store. They wouldn't leave town because they were afraid someone would ransack their business. But it's interesting that you handled some fears and anxieties.
Oh my
that people
God,
had then.
terrible anxieties. And we, my tellers, my associates, my leaders, all of them were receiving phone calls from their family and friends from afar saying, get out of there. You don't understand. They're not telling you the truth. That's going to blow up. You're all going to die. And so we had to continue to do our business because banking, is such a privileged business. I absolutely love it. I've had a 65-year career, as a banker. And no, it's a little long, 55-year career. Yeah, okay. So the thing is, it's a privileged business. The privilege comes with being able to satisfy people's, house America's wealth, finance America's dreams. If you do something, grab a passion about it, grab the passion to have your elevator speech for people because you're the only one that can tell your story. No one can tell your story better than you, even if you're a good liar or a fibber. But anyhow, my train of thought there is such that in banking, I got accepted in the community basically with ease because people needed money. And I was sort of the banker available for them to ask for money or apply for money. And so that made me sort of relevant in the community. Aside from the privilege of being a banker, you think about the need for it to be confidential. Integrity has to be strongly bound to keep private information private, or you're not really a banker. But it's interesting to me that when you ask people about what are the 3 most important things in their lives, they'll say their family, their health, and their money, and sometimes not in that order. So that's pretty important stuff about all of us. So that's what it's like to be a banker, and I like that. So I had this acceptance coming in town, plus I'm going to be the president, so I'm always invited to the table of community solutions or problems with solution. And I'm a solution guy. I'm not shy about that. I have a lot to say, and everybody sort of says, I know Bobby always says everybody has a right to his opinion. And you do, so you'll get it. And I give people advice at table number 19 for all kinds of things to try to help them. I love helping people and helping them get through what they're going through or to achieve what they're embracing and wanting to celebrate with some success. So I have dedicated, since leaving banking, I've dedicated myself to mentoring, coaching, and inspiring women, minorities, nonprofit executives, and then maybe anybody else in business that want a little help. And the thing about it is I'm free. So you get what you pay for.
I think it's interesting you said that working in banking, you had the privilege of having people's attention because they needed what you provided. But York can sometimes be known as a place that can be a little tougher to make your mark and get engaged. Did you have any strategies other than who you were within the bank to kind of get to know the town, to make your way?
Well, the strategy is much like it should be for every board of directors or every management team. And that is when you have a new person, then it's incumbent upon you, the people who have been here a long time or know the tools and means and ways to do things and get things, and in particular to network. Networking has to be one of the three most important elements of leadership. You've got to network. You got to do it well. You got to do it a lot. You got to do it along. It never ends, and it's always good. So I had a good board of directors that helped me, introduce me to the Rotary, got me into the country club, got me into this, into that, and all of the directors participated in my orientation. Today, for instance, when I look around and I see directors of nonprofits retiring, business folks who are getting out of business, and they just put an end to everything, and they move off of boards, which we hope you will get on. But I don't think we do it right. To do it properly, I think you need a board of directors who will engage with you. I think that we have taken the opportunity to retire and walk away. And we shouldn't walk away. We should shadow. And there are a variety of ways to shadow that nobody seems to be doing. I mean, I'm doing it with my table number 19. Mm-hmm. You know, I have all kinds of experiences, good and bad, stupid and smart. You know, I mean, I'm all over the place. And so I can understand a lot of things. And I have a lot of street sense because I don't have an education. And somebody said to me, Bob, you don't have a degree, do you? I said, what do you mean? I got 7 degrees. And they said, get out of town. And I said, well, I do. I said, I didn't earn them, I hired them. So the point there is that you are who you associate with. So my directors associated me with people. People leaving the boards should shadow their follow-on elected directors and do more than, in fact, if they just came to the board meeting to sit next to them, that's okay, but that's not good enough. If they would take and have a bi-monthly or every other month meeting with that new board member outside the boardroom, you could tell them about how history impacted these various things or opportunities or challenges and everybody. I would recommend it to you all if you're in an executive position or a position where it's commonplace in different companies to try to establish yourself in a peer group of people who do what you do in a small group that you should engage in and try to be an advocate for that business that you're in. Advocate means to try to sell it, talk about it all the time, get first mention, build it so it has a high degree of awareness. You don't have to be worldwide to be world class. You just got to do it right. And I feel that you can do that best if you engage people in your own career field and have periodic meetings with them at conventions or at certain meetings that your associations might have at their headquarters as opposed to a resort, whatever. There are all kinds of landscape opportunities for that to happen, but you'll find you probably shouldn't do it, not with the way I'm suggesting, with a competitor, because they won't share stuff with you. They don't want you to know all their successes. I mean, they like to brag about it, but they don't want to tell you how they did it. Then you'll be cutting in on their style. You don't want to do that. Find somebody in Maryland who does that. Find somebody in Chicago that does that. Find somebody elsewhere and try to be engaging at those gatherings where they have similar careers and similar responsibilities, and try to put together a little group. Say, every time we have one of these conventions, and we all go to annual conventions, I see you here a lot, why don't we have a meeting before the convention or after the convention? We'll talk about our stuff. Well, my business, the stuff was like banks were failing all over the place. We lost almost a third maybe a little more than a third of the number of banks in America in 1979. And then again in 1988, the so-called savings and loan crisis. I mean, these are things I've been through, and most generations won't go through them. But the way I see it happening now, you're not only going to go through those similar things, they sound very negative, but you'll learn a lot from them. But what you're going to go through is more technology, more capacity, more speed of acquisition of knowledge, the Zooms, the computer, the phone, and all of that. I mean, that's so good. I only wish I could have had that when I was a young manager in the bank. I could have been so successful if I could have had people like you doing all of that stuff that you do. Because for me, anyway, I feel so much my success is the employees. It's the people I associated with, the board that introduced me to folks, the board that supported me in the things that I had to do and supported my staff, my team that did all the work. Best thing I ever did was come in, turn a key in a door, open it, let all the people in to do their good work, and I was done. My job then was to try to make a face for the organization, and boy, did I ever work hard at that. I'm actually an introvert, but that probably would make you laugh, but because I talk all the time and all that and that. But I'm trying very hard to be nothing, and just not have responsibilities. But the one responsibility is a life responsibility. That's to pass on to you some inspiration or some suggestion that you celebrate yourselves, celebrate whether you're an employee or my employee, or I like to celebrate their successes, their little successes. They ought to have in goals. You were wondering in one conversation, how did my goals change, from time to time, from when I came in to things then just plain happening. And life happens, and it happens so strange and so negatively so many times that you have to be adaptable. Adaptability is one of the other of the three very necessary, most important leadership qualities, is to be able to go with the flow. Thankfully, my wife and I are ballroom dancers, or we were before I had the cane. And I figure if you have to have a cane, it might as well be a fashion statement. So mine's a white rose cane. So I hope I don't fall when I get over there to get it.
I'll send it.
So the long and short of that is to engage with people, share with people, and learn from people. I like to learn something every day of my life. Like I put this white rose on every day. I'm not from New York. How many people do you see with a white rose? I'm from New York. So I got a white rose cane. I got a white rose on my lapel. I have businesses that are called White Rose this and White Rose that because I'm proud. I think we need to be proud of how we affiliate ourselves, proud of what our people all around us are doing, help them do better if you have the capacity to give them good advice, and they shouldn't act just on your advice. So if you engage like that and you get into a peer group, you can look at them and say, boy, what he's explaining is so bad, that had never happened to me. Well, it maybe hasn't, but it probably will. And if you listen close, you'll know how they managed it, well or not well. You can learn from people's mistakes. You certainly learn from your own mistakes. So why not learn from somebody else's mistakes? And they're willing to tell you that. Your competitor wouldn't tell you that. So I'm making that a long story, but I just think those things, who you associate with, who you network with, and whatever number 3 was. When my mentor, Bill Wolf, always told me, Bob, he says, never say you have 2 things to say, because by the time you finish with the first one, you'll forget what the second one was. My biggest business accomplishments are, I think, this is very personal, and it doesn't mean anything to anybody but those of us in our businesses. You want to strive to be the best, strive to be the biggest. And when we came, it was a savings and loan, and a savings and loan was very unlike a bank. It was only savings and mortgages. And the banks were doing car loans and home improvement loans and education loans and marriage, wedding loans. They just did it all. And they had all kinds of checking accounts and so forth. We had one account, a savings account. And that in itself was devastating because we were taking short-term money, which we pay interest for, and lending it long-term for 30 years. So think about the last 30 years, the ups and downs and what you go through. Taking it back just a minute to a previous question, what did I go through or what changed? Well, for God's sake, 19.5% prime rate in the 70s, 17.5% inflation rate, unemployment rates of 10.5%, 10.7%. Those are huge learning conditions. And you learn by getting beat up a lot. And you learn by strategizing in group and in team and with good, knowledgeable working people that you invest in and they invest in you by doing the job right, doing that job well. And so that kind of stuff, those were changes. And so we had to transition from being it's a wonderful life savings and loan, that Christmas thing there about the guy standing there saying, "Don't take your money, I'll leave your money in." Well, that was me on top of a car out here. In fact, we built that building, which is now City Hall, in 1979. And the story around town was Bob and Stanley went to Williamsburg. They bought a door knocker, and they needed something to put it on. So that cost millions of dollars. But, the savings and loan didn't have any stockholders, and so it only paid dividends to its depositors. And the depositors didn't vote. They could if they ever had such an annual meeting, which they didn't. When you open an account at a savings and loan or a mutual savings bank, you signed a proxy. Management would vote that. And you didn't even want to vote it. That was not in your scheme of things to protect your valuables and your money, is to take a stock risk, or something like that. So the biggest accomplishment in the business came as I finished a lot of good work at advocacy for my industry when I became member of the board of the Pennsylvania Bankers Association. And I didn't necessarily have a leadership role there, but I had a loudmouth role there. I talked a lot about what I thought our businesses should do. And California was the only financial community of thrifts, savings banks, that could go public and have stockholders. So I saw that and I said, well, that's the answer to our dilemma here of how to be flexible. The ballroom dancing. Sometimes you got to do a tango, sometimes you got to do a waltz, other times you do cha-cha, and so forth. So we needed to change, and we needed to recapitalize, because with that 17% prime rate, and the CDs that people were buying from you were like 16% were paying out. Now remember, we were giving the mortgage out at 4%. The big difference between 4 and 16%, so there was a hemorrhage of losses on the books. A little hard to sleep at night because it's lonely at the top, by the way. I'm sure you have experienced that. If you get to the top, it's very lonely there. And it's all on you. You take it home at night, you sleep with it, and then you come back together with your cohorts, and hopefully you succeed. You inspire them to succeed. So we decided that we would go to legislature through the association and enable the banks, the savings and loans, to become stock companies like banks. Never was a reason for the difference. So finally it got approved, and Senator Bortner, at that time, Judge Bortner now, was a figure of importance in getting that done, but he stopped me at some point in that to say, Bob, isn't this selfish? for you to want to have bank ownership? I said, well, I'll only own as much as the money I put in, which anybody else can put in what they want as well. And it was high risk, so we brought it public in 1984. And then my second success came, big success, when I merged it into a thrift in Harrisburg, the Harris Savings Association. And they were a hybrid kind of a thrift, and they had 75% stock was in their own holding company name and 25% was public, meaning the public didn't have anything to say about anything. It was just a way for them to get some more capital and have people think that, I mean, it still was valuable, but it's just they didn't have the voting rights to do anything about it. And so I brought them public as well. Wonderful, wonderful experience doing road shows around the country for both of those organizations to bring them together. So one of the other successes, I get to a tiny success that I celebrate. You should celebrate small successes, really. You should never put up goals like the North Star, that's how you navigate to get places. That's not right. I mean, it's okay to use it as a guide, but it's not your goal. The goal is the places upon the way, the waypoints. Therefore, the name Waypoint Bank is anonymously, we had a vote or a survey of what we should name our bank. They picked mine anonymously, Waypoint Bank. I love it because a waypoint is a way you get to different places by going these different waypoints, like in your navigation on your car, So anyway, that was fun, but it was such an incredible financial success, not so much for me, although I was the largest stockholder of the bank only because I bought it. I earned it, and I put away money all the time, or never took a dividend for years and years and let it just all pile up. And I became the largest stockholder of the bank. So,
what might regrets be that you have over the course of your career? Things you might have done differently?
Regrets. I try not to regret anything. I mean, I feel sorry for things. Don't dwell on what I could wish I had done. I try to adapt anything like that to something I might do in the future, just to try to do it right. But I regret that, frankly, I made that successful merger because I wasn't happy with the lack of community attention that the follow-on bank provided in New York. Fortunately, Bill Wolf and I understood generosity. We understood the needs of our neighbors. And so we were always trying to put money into a foundation. So we had the York Federal Foundation, and we put money into that. And we gave lots of money around town. And tell you, the local community of bankers were quite jealous, and I have heard them say certain things that get back to me, that they'd say, that Pullo, you can't outspend him. Well, they could. They just didn't know how. For instance, we had budgets of travel, entertainment, advertising, 4 or 5 different categories that you could choose to put money in. And I put all the money in the community because that was all advertising. It was all PR. It was all getting your top of mind name or the first mentioned name. So the one great success in there too is that we ultimately became this little teeny shop that became the largest bank in New York County by deposits, which is only meaningful to bankers. And then we were the first bank to successfully bring a company public in the state of Pennsylvania because we got that legislation passed. Now they're almost all stock owned. So if you think about that, always look at your insurance companies that are your insurance providers. If they're a mutual company, buy their stock. They can do the same thing I did with the bank because they're owned by their insureds. And you don't get to exercise any ownership capacity, but they will need capital in the next financial crisis, and they'll go public. And it's a super, super deal. It's legal and it's fair. But you, the depositors, the stockholders, the insureds, are the ones that benefit from that kind of transaction. And I knew that. So our effort there, it was hard to get even my board of directors to buy into this, to do it. But it was that or not survive. We needed more capital. And so we did that. And I went door knocking to people who said they would like to invest in the stock of my bank. And so they were making verbal pledges and commitments, but they really weren't serious. And I knew in my heart and in my numbers, I knew this could not lose. So I'm convincing my wife is saying, Bob, what if it doesn't work? Everybody we know is investing in it. I said, we leave town. But of course it would work, and it did. So I feel like I've made lots of millionaires in York, the York community, by convincing them to put a few bucks into it or convert their savings into that, because the stock went up over this time over 1,000%. So you can imagine what that means in somebody's pension fund, retirement fund, or kitty for other things you might love to do, want to do, and you can do.
A little bit of hard work and a little bit of luck.
Second.
A little bit of hard work and a little bit of luck.
Yeah, well, luck is like the harder I work, the luckier I get.
There you go.
Yeah. I just know one of the things that my staff would say that I remember is, Bob, why are you never satisfied? And I said, well, it's because I think you're better than you think you are. And they thought about that, and then they understood. Bill Wolf told me that did I say this already? He said that the last year's success is tomorrow's quota. So you can't live on last year. Your quota keeps going up, at least by inflation. Like any of you in the nonprofit world, you grow your donor base, but it doesn't grow by inflation. So somebody gave you $10,000 10 years ago. It's like giving you $1,000 today. Today's 10,000 doesn't buy any more than 1,000 bought 10 years ago. So if they never change, they're not keeping up with inflation. So the nonprofit's taking advantage of this Give Local York that I promoted because I couldn't get anybody else to do it. So I guaranteed people that I would fund whatever it costs to do a Give Local York here in our community. And the first year, we had 250 nonprofits sign up at a mere $100 a piece. And we did extremely well, and we earned about we collected $1 million that night. And we had 13,000 donors. 35% of them were not known to the nonprofit community. So it was brand new money. And the next year, it was 300 nonprofits that signed up. And we got $3 million. And we had 18,000 donors. And then it kept going on, and like now we have like 20,000 donors, and we're over $4 million, and we're looking at trying to get 25,000 donors. That's the generosity that we're trying to celebrate.
Lots of exciting things on the horizon. Give Local York is May 6th, by the way, if you haven't heard already. 5th year. What? Give Local.
Oh, yeah, the 6th.
May 6th.
The May 6th.
Yes. I want to be conscious of the time. One of the wonderful things about Table 19 at the diner is that you have Bob's attention and the ability to ask him questions. So I want to open it up. If anybody has any questions that you want to ask Mr. Pullo, please speak up or raise your hand or shout it out. I'll repeat the question so everybody can hear it, but yes.
I don't have a question, but I have a testimony to everybody. I met Bob
You might earn yourself some more free work tonight.
Yeah, that wasn't that wasn't my advice. That was my Army's advice. All the people.
Tony girl. She'd like to go to breakfast.
Aha! Call me, or I'll give you a card, or we'll bump into each other again like we did. But that'd be fun. Yeah.
Any other questions? Yeah.
In the Waco neighborhood, we're really working on trying to do some fundraising to host various community events amongst the merchants there. I'm wondering if you have any advice on where do we start at the ground level for fundraising when you're just getting started?
The first thing that comes to mind is that you should sit down and get the annual report of every nonprofit that would be meaningful to you and look at the donor list. They have categories of $1,000 givers, $5,000 givers, $1 million givers. Those people will at least be, you'll notice most of them do that for advertising purposes. Their name gets associated with the event. So it's an event funded by Gladfellow Insurance Company, York Federal Savings and Loan, but be aware that they don't exist anymore. Okay, and then you get a list of their patrons and their supporters, and you also get a list of the board of directors. And those people in the board of directors are really philanthropists. And let me just say one other thing about philanthropy. You don't have to have money to be a philanthropist. You know, you have to have talent and time. Time, treasure, and your dollars. You know, so it's either give, get, or get out. So on the board of directors. But if you're a bank manager, they don't make a lot of money. They don't make the money that a president or a vice president of the bank or any other company makes. So you have a young man with babies at home that need shoes and so forth, and they ask you to donate. And I asked them if they wanted to get on boards because we want to make a name for ourselves beyond me. It's all about them as well, but I'm their spokesman. And but they can't afford to do that. Well, we give them the money to do that. But they don't have to give money. You can get people on your board to introduce you to people who can give money, and that qualifies as giving. And that's the networking. Again, who do they know?
Thank you.
Okay.
One more question? Anybody else? All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Pullo, and thank you everyone else for attending.